All right. Hello again, adventurers, and welcome to another exciting episode of D&D Did a Deep Dive, the show where we dive deep into classes, subclasses, and other features of 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons to help you get the most out of your choices. So, today, we are going to start fighting. And by that, I mean we're going to start looking into all the new options for fighters that are added with Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. Now, the new options and the new features that Tasha's has, they do have new optional class features like the other classes, but they also add a bunch of new maneuvers, and they have two new subclasses. So for this particular episode, we are going to focus on the new optional class features, the new maneuvers, and a nifty section at the end of the fighter chapter called Battlemaster builds. If you've seen my fighter episodes, you will know that my favorite fighter subclass is by far the Battlemaster. I think it's one of the most underutilized subclasses, and the Battlemaster builds is literally that. It's suggestions for which maneuvers and fighting styles to take to emulate certain kinds of kind of classic archetypes of fighters. To give you an example, we'll go over all these in at the end here. But to give you an example, you have like an archer, a brawler, a gladiator, a lancer, a pugilist. You know, they have all these different suggestions on how to build these really kind of unique fighter. You could almost call them subclass, just really showing the versatility of the Battlemaster in general. So we're going to go over that. But first, let's jump into these optional class features. Now, to give you a quick refresher on how the fighter works in 5th edition. Again, every class should play very differently right from the get-go. The things that define the class, that makes it play differently, we call them the defining features. They should show up within the first two levels. Fighters specifically, their defining features are they get more attacks than anyone else, and this is kind of exemplified by one of their abilities called Action Surge, which effectively gives them a second action on a turn. And when they get extra attack at 5th level, that means they get 2 extra attacks with Action Surge. Later on, at 11th and to the 20th level, they get a 3rd and a 4th attack. So fighters get to attack more than almost any other class. And that's kind of what they're built around. They're also built to be kind of hardy. So they have the ability to heal themselves, and for the life of me, I cannot remember what the ability is called, and I'm feeling really dumb right now. Second Wind, that's what it's called. Yeah, the kind of idea behind the fighter is it's supposed to be a very versatile class where you can play it a ton of different ways, but all the different things you're going to do are going to involve things that allow you to attack differently or attack more powerfully, and things that are going to make you just harder to kill. So let's jump into the fighter optional class features. Now, unlike the monk that we talked about before, there's actually only 2 optional features for the fighter. However, they also add those additional maneuvers that they don't call them an optional features. They just call them maneuver options. So we'll kind of classify all of that into to the optional features, but the maneuvers are just for the Battlemaster. Well, kind of. So the first thing they get right at for first level is new fighting style options. If you're unaware of what fighting styles are, at first level, when you to choose the fighter, you get to pick a fighting style, and this is part of the thing that's going to help define what kind of fighter you have. In the player's handbook, they have a total of 6 different fighting styles: archery, defense, dueling, great weapon fighting, protection, and two-weapon fighting. And that really covers pretty well the gamut of different fighters most people will think of. Archery is your ranged fighters. Defense is more your tank-like sword and board kind of things. Dueling is specifically designed to be either used by sword and board that actually want a little bit more damage, or by your more like dueling, like rapier wielding style, dexterity-based fighters, dexterity-based melee fighters. Great weapon fighting, me hit big thing with axe. Protection is definitely a tank kind of thing. Then two-weapon fighting is exactly what it sounds like. You get to use two weapons. The additional fighting style options here just really expand the ways you can play your fighter. So the first fighting style they introduce is called blind fighting. You have blind sight with a range of 10 feet, and we'll come back to that in a second as to what that means. But they define it here anyway. And then it mentions you can see invisible creatures in that range as well, unless the creature successfully hides from you, which I've talked about this before. It doesn't make a ton of sense to me, because in order to hide from someone, you have to have some sort of cover obscuring you, and if they can see you, you have nothing that you can use to hide. So that's something that doesn't make it a whole lot of sense to me. But blind sight is exactly what it sounds like. They can see without sight. There are some slight limitations to most blind sight. Things like, just like normal sight, you can't like see through walls or anything like that. So if there's something blocking your way, it's going to also block your blind sight. But beyond that, it's a really useful thing. It means, in general, you're very rarely, if ever, going to have an opponent that can get advantage on you, because you can't see them when you are fighting invisible enemies, which does happen. The invisible stalker is a specific enemy that is designed to be completely invisible. So that kind of stuff does happen. As far as choosing it as a fighting style, due to the fact that you don't get another fighting style, even as the fighter, you don't get a second or a third fighting style anywhere unless you multi-class to another class that gives you a fighting style option. Like the Ranger gets fighting styles. I think the Paladin gets fighting styles, though they tend to be significantly more limited than the Fighter. The Fighter can use almost any fighting style that exists. The blind sight. I think if you were to take blind sight or blind fighting as your fighting style, you really do need to kind of build the character around that feature, because at low levels, it's going to be very, very rare for you to actually deal with deal with invisible enemies or anything like that. However, once you get to second tier, invisible enemies may come up every so often. But something that does happen a little bit more often is you have to start dealing with the darkness spell. And blind sight works in magical darkness because it doesn't use vision to see. So this is another one where that combo of darkness and blind sight can be really, really useful in the idea that someone could cast darkness on like a pebble or something. The blind fighter could pick it up and then run into a group of enemies and be able to attack them, and no one would be able to attack it. The one downside to it is darkness is a 20-foot radius. Your blind sight is only to 10 feet. So you literally you would still be blind to anything beyond to 10 feet away from you, because the darkness is just that little bit bigger. But beyond that, you're still doing pretty well. And if you just, drop the darkness at certain points to go out and get like a position on where enemies are, or you can have allies that are going saying, go straight or something like that, so your character can actually go. It can still be pretty interesting. As far as the new fighting styles, this one I think you really have to have a specific idea in mind for a character to want to take that blind fighting. Again, especially since blind sight really isn't going to be that useful until you get late tier 2 to tier 3, and a lot of campaigns never make it to tier 3. Or just barely get into tier 3 before they explode. Next fighting style is Interception. Now, this is one of the ones that I have some... oh, wait, no. I'm thinking of a different one. This one is literally a kind of group defensive. Effectively, when a creature you can see hits a target other than you within 5 feet of you with an attack, you can use your reaction to reduce the damage the target takes by 1d10 plus your proficiency bonus, and you must be wielding a shield or a simple or martial weapon to use this reaction. Again, this one is interesting, but it's another fighting style that you really need to kind of build your character around, because this does require you to be right next to someone who's getting attacked for it to ever be useful. Now, the fact that it gives you a use for your reaction other than opportunity attacks is great. We talk about action economy all the time. Anytime you can use your reaction, you are helping your team, and reducing the damage is good. Even at high levels, a D10 plus your proficiency bonus is going to get a maximum of 16 hit points reduction, which is okay. It's generally going to be a lot more useful at lower levels than it is at higher levels, but there are going to be those situations where that extra, 10 or 15 hit points is going to be the difference between a conscious ally and an unconscious one. So, again, an interesting fighting style. It has limited uses compared to a lot of the other ones, but in those situations, and if you do kind of build your character around it, and your team is aware of it, you can get a lot out of this fighting style. The next one is called Superior to Technique, and this is where I start having issues with the fighting styles. This one, you learn one maneuver of your choice from among those available to the Battle Master archetype. You gain one superiority die, which is a d6. The die fuels your maneuvers. A superior die is expended when you use it, and you regain your expended superiority die when you finish a short or long rest. The reason I have an issue with this, despite the fact that I've already said I'm a huge fan of the Battle Master, is that exact thing. I'm a huge fan of the Battle Master, and I don't like any abilities or feats or anything like that that is going to take away what defines a subclass or a class and makes it special. And this means that you don't actually have to take the Battle Master archetype in order to get maneuvers, which are the defining aspect of the Battle Master. Now, the fact that it's only one and superior technique from what I've been able to see thus far, I think it is a fighter specific for fighting style. So it's not like anyone that gets access to fighting styles can now just get a battle master feature, and they do already have a feat that does that, which is another thing that kind of annoys me, is that you literally can get the exact same effect as this fighting style, which is a one-time thing for your entire class that's supposed to help define your character. You can take a feat and get this exact same ability, which doesn't make a ton of sense to me. Fighting styles are not supposed to be replaceable with feats and vice versa. They're supposed to be something that is unique to just a few of the melee or the weapon-based classes. And thus far, none of the fighting styles has ever been replicable through a feat or through something else. You had to take the fighting style. So superior technique just feels weird to me. Even if you're planning on going Battle Master, your D6 doesn't increase with this superior technique. So you will have two different pools of Battle Master maneuver dice, where one is, you know, your superior technique and the rest are from your Battle Master. So there's nothing wrong with it. And again, I really like maneuvers. I just think it lessens the Battle Master. And to be honest, I think this might be a response to the fact that the Battle Master was a super underutilized fighter subclass. A lot more people went either Eldritch Knight or to Champion, because Eldritch Knight gives you magic, and min-maxers really like to mix magic and weapons. It can get really broken really quick. And Champion is super simple. That is your kind of traditional fighter, me go forward, hit thing. So Battle Master was never a really popular one, and the maneuvers are super awesome. So I could almost see this being a response of, well, you know what, Battle Master's really unpopular, and we're adding these new maneuvers. People aren't going to want to play Battle Masters, which I did disagree completely. So let's throw them a bone and let them use some of these maneuvers without having to use the Battle Master, because now there's so many other archetypes. No one's going to want to play just a flat Battle Master. So it doesn't break the game or anything like that. I like my maneuvers to be Battle Masters specific. The next one after that is thrown weapon fighting, which I love. You can draw a weapon that has the thrown property as part of the attack you make with the weapon. In addition, when you hit with a ranged attack using a thrown weapon, you gain a +2 bonus to the damage roll. Finally, they have a way to play a ranged fighter that doesn't use a bow. I like the idea of a knife thrower, and there are quite a few examples of it in popular media. If you watch the Umbrella Academy, Diego, his special powers, he can kind of modify the flight path of things in motion. If you've watched the Expendables, Jason Statham's character is really good at throwing knives. I like I like that archetype of someone that just throws knives or darts or whatever it is. I think it's really, really interesting. And thus far, you've been a little bit limited, especially with fighter getting so many attacks that you'd only be able to throw one or two. If you happen to be already holding thrown weapons in both your hands, you could only get to 2 throws off. With thrown weapon fighting, you can, to use the phrase that most of us know, dagger, dagger, dagger. Like this was built for Vaxel Dawn. And I love it. Again, it will super change how you play your character, because you will have to stock up on the thrown weapons. Oh, excuse me. So yeah, it's really cool. The thing again, I make weird characters. When I make characters, I try and go unique and different. If I was to make a thrown weapon fighter, 100%, I would make someone that throws cards. I'd use darts or just whatever item. I would probably use darts since I'd be going through this so much for the actual stats of the thing. But I would totally build a card throwing character. Just like like that would be massively cool, and it would just take reflavoring darts. So yeah, like that already, I'm already building a card throwing character in my head and trying to decide, do I want him to be this or that? Like, ugh, I just love that. The next new fighting style is unarmed fighting. And this one I was upset about at first. And then as I got more used to it, I got better. The reason I was originally upset, again, I'm not a big fan of abilities that take away something that used to be unique to a certain class or subclass. And unarmed fighting is a monk thing, and I'm a monk player. I love my monks. However, unarmed fighting isn't quite the same as the martial arts feature, which does a lot more than just let them hit with punches. Effectively, with unarmed fighting, your unarmed strikes can deal bludgeoning damage equal to 1d6 plus your strength modifier on a hit. Normally, an unarmed strike does 1 damage plus your strength mod on a hit. So this not only allows you to do actual damage with them, but it's strength based compared to the monk, which is entirely dexterity based. So that's okay. Again, still not happy that someone else is getting a punching ability. And then if you aren't wielding any weapons or a shield when you make the attack roll, the d6 becomes a d8. So if you're a pure, punchy, and you're not just, elbowing someone in the middle of a fight, you actually do d8s, which is effectively like wielding a longsword in your fist. Now, because unarmed strikes don't technically count as a weapon, you would not be able to dual wield unarmed strikes. That is still something exclusive to the monk. But the next line is the thing that I think makes this really, really interesting, which is, at the start of each of your turns, you can deal 1d4 bludgeoning damage to one creature grappled by you. And that is super cool. Unarmed fighting effectively makes you a grappler. And if you combine unarmed fighting with the grappler, I think that's what it's called. Yeah, the the grappler feat, which effectively means anytime you have a creature grappled, you have advantage on attack rolls against them. With this, now you not only have an advantage, but you also do just extra damage for free. There's no action required to do that damage. You just do extra damage. Yeah, this can create a really cool grappling. Excuse me. This can create a really cool grappling-based character. And I like that. I think it's really interesting. And when we go over the maneuvers, you will see other things that are interesting as well. Now, the other thing, so that's all the fighting, the new fighting style options. The 4th level optional feature is called martial versatility, which drastically changes how important fighting styles are. Effectively, whenever you reach a level in this class that grants an ability score improvement, you can do one of the following. Either replace a fighting style with another fighting style available to fighters, or if you know any maneuvers from the Battle Master archetype, you can replace one maneuver with a different maneuver. I'm a huge fan of abilities that allow course correction. In 4th edition, which is the first edition I played on a table, basically, every time you level up, or I think every 2 levels, something like that, you could replace a lower level ability. You could replace one lower level of ability. So if you took, like when you started a character in 4th edition, you chose 2 outwill powers, an encounter power, and a daily power at level 1. Obviously, that changed depending on what class you were playing, but for the most part, that's how it worked. If by level 3 you realized one of your at-will abilities you're using all the time, and the other one you have never used, you can replace it with something that you will probably use more often. And I like that, especially for new players. You're not going to know how your character is going to play at level 5, at level 1. Those of us that have been playing for a long time tend to kind of plan our characters out pretty far in advance. So this is less useful in that particular aspect. But again, this ensures that if you do make a mistake with a fighting style that you chose, or if while you're playing just the character you envisioned is not the character you end up playing because of party composition or maybe story reasons, you just play them differently, this is a really nice thing. Now, for those of us that do plan our characters level 20 abilities at level 1 before we even build the character, this can be highly useful for using things like the blind fighting style, or the interception fighting style. I mentioned with both of those that there's very limited avenues for those to be useful, and a lot of those avenues are at higher levels. With this, you actually can start off with something a little more useful, like maybe you choose the protection fighting style just because the additional armor class is really useful at low levels. But when you get to level 8, you already have magic items and the things like that that'll help you have a decent armor class, or maybe you've upgraded to like half plate or full plate at this point, so the additional armor class isn't really necessary. But you're starting to deal with invisible enemies, or you have allies that can cast darkness or other abilities like that, or you're fighting enemies that use darkness a lot. Now you can switch over to the blind fighting, and you don't have to spend 8 levels where it's next to useless. So in all of these, they're just really good ideas in general. And I really like features like that allow you to course correct. So very useful, very good. Now, for some new maneuvers. Again, I love the Battle Master. I think it is by far the best of a fighter subclass because of how versatile it can be. With these new maneuver options, they're not giving Battle Master for fighters or anyone more superiority dice or allowing them to learn more maneuvers. You are still limited by the maximum number of maneuvers you can learn. This is just giving you a ton more options, which again, I am always a fan of, because the more options they provide, the more versatility you can have, to the point where now, again, with these Battlemaster builds we'll go over in a second here, you can have a team of entirely Battlemasters, and every single one of them will play massively differently. And I love that. I think it's super cool. So let's go into these maneuvers. First maneuver is called Ambush. Whenever you make a dexterity stealth check or an initiative roll, you can expend 1 superiority die and add the die to the roll, provided you aren't incapacitated. Fighters are not known for their sneakiness. Depending on the version you build. Strength-based fighters are not known for their sneakiness, especially since a lot of heavy armor imposes disadvantage on stealth checks. So being able to burn a superiority die to just give you that little boost of stealth can be super, super useful. However, boosting your initiative at really key points is even more useful, especially since, again, fighters get a lot of it at attacks, and if you are a battle master, you are going to be controlling the battlefield. So, yeah, being able to go before everyone else means you can set up the rest of the team for success right from the get-go. I think ambush will probably be one of the least utilized of the maneuver options if they ever take a poll and say, which maneuvers do you use them most? Simply because I think because there's no damage involved with it. There's nothing in combat. This happens either outside of combat or right as combat starts. I think people are going to massively undervalue how useful that is for Battle Master. So yeah, I'd be interested to see people actually start using it, but I think it's got a lot of promise. Next one is called Bait and Switch. When you're within 5 feet of a creature on your turn, you can expend one superiority die and switch places with that creature, provided you spend at least 5 feet of movement and the creature is willing and isn't incapacitated. This movement doesn't provoke opportunity attacks. Then you roll the superiority die, and until the start of your next turn, you or the other creature, your choice, gains a bonus to AC equal to the number rolled. This is super cool, guys. Effectively, with Bait and Switch, you can either take one of your squishies that just needs some help not dying and put yourself in their spot and then just give them a bunch of armor, or you can use this at the beginning of your turn, swap places with someone, and just run into a melee with all these people getting ready to kill you with just a lot more armor. And with the Battle Master, and I'm actually going to look it up here. There we go. Their superiority dies get bigger as they go, I think. No, they just get more, but they're a D8. So you can have up to +8 armor class, which for a fighter, most fighters are going to start at either a 16 or an 18 armor class. If you use a shield, you'll probably have an 18 armor class. If you eventually move, if you're a strength-based fighter and you're built to deal with tough stuff, your armor class will be 18 from your plate mail, plus 20 from your shield, plus any number of additions from magic plate or a magic shield or, cloak of protection, anything like that. So you could easily have an AC of like 22 without trying. And then you add on a D8 of armor. You could have a 30 armor class. Not only lasts for a turn, but for that turn, you are untouchable. And again, as a battle master, you are action economy focused. You're trying to get them to waste their actions. And if you switch spots with someone, then run into the middle of the bad guys, and they just sit there going, and nothing gets past your 30 AC. Yeah, I love the idea of a fighter going, hey, can I stand there? And the other guy's like, oh, sure, I don't mind. And then they're like, ching, ching, and just wander in. Like, I just see myself rolling attacks. Does a 27 hit? No. Does a 29 hit? No. Screw you. So yeah, I love Bait and Switch. And like I said, there's so many opportunities for Bait and Switch to be really, really useful. Not just in raising your own armor class, but again, you have that squishy person that's just been surrounded by bad guys. You move up to them, you switch spots with them. Now all the bad guys are going to be attacking you. And if they need it, you can increase their armor class, or you can increase yours and just take the horde. So yeah, Bait and Switch, I think, is an awesome ability. Brace. When a creature you can see moves into reach, or let me try this again. When a creature you can see moves into the reach you have with the melee weapon you're wielding, you can use your reaction to expend one superiority die and make one attack against the creature using that weapon. If the attack hits, add the superiority die to the weapon's damage roll. The only issue I have with Brace is this is effectively a lesser version of Sentinel, and Sentinel is a feat. And Sentinel doesn't have you using a limited resource to do it. Sentinel allows you to make an opportunity attack if someone comes into your range, or it might be Polearm Master, one or the other. I think it's just a Sentinel, but it lets you make I may be 100% wrong on this. My brain is just so fried right now, guys. I have them all here. Let me look. It's not that. It must be Polearm Mansion. Yeah, Polearm Master gives you that ability, but you have to be using a Polearm. So I guess now that I'm not thinking it's just a Sentinel, it can be really useful. And again, it gives you a use for your reaction. You're going to do more damage because you're adding your superiority die to it. I just, with Polearm Master, I see that a little bit as not as useful. Yeah. Anyway, it's interesting. It gives you a use for your reaction. You get to do a little extra damage. If you crit on it, you do a lot of extra damage. You know, really nice. Commanding Presence is the next one. When you make a Charisma Intimidation, Charisma Performance, or Charisma Persuasion check, you can expend one superiority die and add the superiority die to the ability check. This is another one I really like. If for no other reason, then it is a non-combat maneuver. It gives you a use for your maneuvers outside of combat. And the ability to influence people is really useful, whether it's trying to get information from someone, or trying to get a better deal on rooms, or convincing someone to sell you an item they normally wouldn't. Like, there's just so many uses for the charisma trait, and a lot of fighters don't really put a ton into their charisma. It's generally going to be strength or dex, and then constitution, because you're getting hit a lot. So yeah, really cool, really interesting. Again, can make for a really interesting character, especially if you start using options like trying to get enemies to surrender in battle and things like that, which is an intimidation check. Can be really interesting. Grappling Strike goes right along with that unarmed... what was it? Unarmed Fighting fighting style. Helps if I don't go straight over it. Grappling Strike. Immediately after you hit a creature with a melee attack on your turn, you can expend one superiority die and then try to grapple the target as a bonus action, and add the superiority die to your strength athletics check. Okay, so if you take the unarmed fighting style, you punch them. You use Grappling Strike as your bonus action. You now get to grapple them. And then if you have the grappler feats, now all of your attacks against them have advantage. They can't move away from you. You can move with them. And at the start of all your turns, you can just do extra damage to them. Like, that just turns into a really cool thing. Now, the grapple ability, or the grapple action, can actually replace one of your attacks. When you're making attacks... you can either take the grapple action, which takes your entire action, or when you take the attack action and you have multiple attacks, you can replace one of those attacks with a grapple check. This simply gives you the ability to get all of your attacks in, which is always useful. and it gives you a boost to the grapple check because you get to add your superiority die to the check. So this is another one where if you were to take a the feat that gives you maneuvers, or the fighting style that gives you a maneuver, this one could be really useful. Though I think it's most useful if you take the unarmed fighting style. So the next new maneuver is Quicktoss. As a bonus action, you could expend 1 superiority die and make a ranged attack with a weapon that has the thrown property. You can draw the weapon as part of making this attack. If you hit, have the superiority die to the weapon's damage roll. Again, dagger. This is going to give you an extra dagger if you're not dual wielding melee weapons with the thrown property. Which become very expensive compared to things like darts. Yeah, I mean, it's just, you get extra damage from the attack. You get to do thrown weapon attack. Like, the whole thing is just really interesting. It's really cool. It gels perfectly with the thrown weapon fighting style. Like, again, it's just a really cool idea. And I like the fact that they're finally putting a little bit of emphasis on the thrown weapons, whereas in most of 5th edition and in most earlier editions, thrown weapons have kind of been, well, I don't have anything else I can do, I guess I'll throw this is something. But they've never really been emphasized in the game, and I like that this is really letting you build characters that are kind of built around the idea of being a thrown weapon character. The final new maneuver is called Tactical Assessment. When you make an intelligence investigation, intelligence history, or wisdom insight check, you can expend superiority die and add the superiority die to the ability check. Basically the same thing as commanding presence, except it is intelligence and wisdom based things. And again, there's a ton of useful things here. I think intelligence history is probably the quote-unquote least useful for most people, because intelligence investigation is what you use to find traps, which has a direct impact on the party. You miss a trap, it springs, bad things happen. And wisdom insight, most people just use that as a lie detector to test. That's not how it works completely, but that's what most D&D players think of, is insight is, are you lying? There's a lot more you can learn and get from insight, but that's what people think of. History, though, people just think of that as, oh, it's remembering stuff. How is that ever useful? Well, I've said this many times before, knowledge is power in D&D. And being able to remember a really useful fact about, perhaps this is your party's first time dealing with trolls, and no one knows that trolls regenerate, and the only way to turn it off is through acid or fire damage. That intelligence history check could be the difference between winning or losing that. Again, when you're coming up with information and planning attacks and things like that, a good history check can mean the difference between you ambushing the enemy and the enemy ambushing you. So all of them really useful. Again, I really dig these out of combat maneuvers. I think they're super cool. So yeah. So those are the new maneuvers and the optional class features. The last thing I wanted to go over, and I'll go over it kind of quickly because this video is a little longer than I originally intended it for to be, is the Battle Master builds. Again, at the end of the Fighter chapter, they have this thing called Battle Master builds. And what it is it will give you a name of a Battle Master build, and it'll tell you what fighting style or styles would fit well with it. It'll tell you what maneuvers you should take in order to use this fighting style, and it also will tell you what feats you should take to use this particular build. And everything about this I love. Again, I've said a lot of times before, I've said a lot of times in this particular video, Battle Masters are such a versatile class that you can have just so many different styles of it. And so this effectively, instead of just adding 2 new archetypes, which they did do, and we'll cover in a little later videos, they effectively added 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. They effectively added 13 more archetypes, 13 more subclasses of a fighter, without having to do anything. And I would love to see them do this with other classes, though, again, with the fighter, with the fact that they get more feats than any other class, and they're built to be very, very versatile. I'm not sure you could do this kind of builds thing with any other, with a lot of the other classes. I think there's a few that are customizable enough that you could. But yeah, let's go over these relatively quickly. So you have the Archer, which you take the Archer fighting style, which just adds flat damage. The 3 maneuvers they suggest are Disarming Strike, Distracting Strike, and Precision Attack. Disarming does exactly what it sounds. Distracting, I believe that's the one that makes them have disadvantage on any attacks against anyone but you, which if you're an archer, being able to shoot someone and them being too far away to hit you means they're, and they have to hit you if they don't want to disadvantage, means you're going to be annoying a lot of enemies because they won't be able to hit you. And then persistent attack just is an accuracy boost, basically. And then sharpshooter, if you've never heard about the sharpshooter feat, I do go over it in one of my feats video. It is a massively useful feat. It makes any type of ranged weapon attacker super deadly. And then after all that, they have a little blurb that kind of describes the build. I won't go through all the blurbs, but to give you an example, this is the blurb for the Archer. You prefer to deal with your enemies from afar, trusting in a well-placed arrow, javelin, or sling bullet to end a fight without a response. You rely on accuracy and probably subscribe to the axiom that those who live by the sword die by the bow. I love it. That little flavor at the end really makes you excited to play these. So let's jump into some other ones. The Bodyguard build. The fighting style, you use either Interception, which we talked about already, or Protection, which is just that extra armor class. The maneuvers, Bait and Switch, which we talked about. Disarming Attack, Goading Attack. Oh, Goading Attack's the one that does that. I can't remember what Distracting Strike does. Oh, the next attack against the next attack roll has advantage. So that's what that does. Still, this is super useful. Goading Attack is the one I talked about before, where they have to attack you or they have disadvantage. And then Grappling Strike, because again, as a bodyguard, if your job is protecting someone else, the ability to grapple and then move someone away from the target you're protecting is really useful. And the feats they mention are Alert, Observant, Sentinel, and Tough. So yeah, really powerful bodyguard there. Brawler, you can guess what this is. They actually have a bunch of different fighting styles you can do for this, though. Blind fighting, 2-weapon fighting, or unarmed fighting. And then maneuvers, ambush, disarming attack, feigning attack, pushing attack, and trip attack. So basically all the dirty fighting stuff that you would see in a barroom brawl, they have maneuvers for it, and if you choose them, you can do this really kind of cool brawler. And then the feats: athlete, durable, grappler, resilient, shield master, tavern brawler, and tough. Yes, all of which are very useful feats. And again, you'll just have this kind of big, kind of brash, I can beat you up, very Roadhouse style character. The Duelist. dueling and or two-weapon fighting for your fighting style, depending on you want to be a pokey or a slashy. Maneuvers: evasive footwork, feinting attack, lunging attack, parry, precision attack, and riposte. All of which are really, really useful. Riposte effectively allows you to attack back. If a creature misses you, you can use your reaction to attack them back. So super, super useful. Very much in the dueling style of, oh, you missed me, poke. And then the feats: defensive duelist, which I use on my monk, and I love it. Dual wielder, observant, savage attacker, or weapon master, to just get more weapons you can use. Gladiator. Fighting styles, they mention defense or two-weapon fighting. Maneuvers: goading attack, menacing attack, sweeping attack, and trip attack. So if you're really thinking of the kind of gladiator fighting where they're fighting lions or fighting other gladiators, this is really designed to be a very flashy style. You can hit multiple opponents with sweep attacks. You can trip opponents and, stab down into them. Kind of a really cool idea. And then feats: athlete, charger, which I think is massively underutilized. Dual wielder, durable, grappler, savage attacker, tough, or weapon master. Very much kind of a flashy, brilliant, brutal fighting style. Hoplite, if you watched my series on Dale Kingsmill's supplement they made for Theros, she had basically a hoplite. This would be how to create that character without having access to her really, really awesome subclass. So fighting style: defense, thrown weapon, or thrown weapon fighting, because they'll throw their spears. Maneuver: brace, lunging attack, parry, precision attack. And then for feats: athlete, grappler, pole-arm master, sentinel, or shield master. Hoplites were kind of defined by, the really big round shields they would wear, and they would use spears to attack with. So that's kind of what they're trying to build here, and I think it's cool. Lancer, or as I like to call them, dragoons, which isn't what dragoons are. Dragoons are actually mounted cavalrymen, but Final Fantasy dragoons, they use spears. For the Lancer, they actually think they say for the Lancer they choose dueling as the fighting style because the spear is a one-handed weapon with a versatile property. You can get the extra damage with the spear using it one-handed. Maneuvers: lunging attack, menacing attack, precision attack, pushing attack. Which all kind of makes sense around the idea of a Lancer going in and attacking. Or, again, the more traditional kind of Lancer uses a shield and kind of pokes over it. If you look at, the Monster Hunter series, and the Lance fighting style has a big old shield and a big old lance. It's kind of what real Lancers are. And then feats: heavy armor master, mounted combats to give you more of that kind of charging Lancer, and savage attacker. And they particularly mention that when the cavalry is called in, that means you. So they particularly mean Lancers that are mounted, which at that point just call them dragoons, because that's what they were. Dragoons were mounted combatants. And I just like the idea of a dragoon. They have the Outrider, which you choose the archery fighting style. Maneuvers: ambush, distracting strike, goading attack, precision attack, and Quicktoss. And then feats: alert, crossbow expert, mountain combatant, observant, or sharpshooter. And the Outrider is effectively a ranged attacker on horseback or mounted in some way. And I don't see a lot of people doing that. I've had one character in one of my campaigns take the mounted combatant feat. And that was because they were a paladin and they got a mount as a part of a spell ability or something. And they just wanted to be that kind of mounted paladin thing. However, mounted ranged attackers are actually something that happened. There were mounted crossbowmen were really, really powerful in, I want to say, Chinese military had some really powerful. They had repeating crossbows that they made, and so their mounted archers effectively were really good. I believe mounted archers were a thing in a lot of different places, but those are the ones that could come to mind. And it really is an interesting idea, especially when you can take the advantage of the additional movement speed you get from a mount, and combine it with the additional range you get from using a ranged weapon. Get a really cool thing. Not too many left. Let's really kind of get through these so this isn't a 4-hour-long video. The Pugilist. Fighting style. Unarmed fighting. Who would have thought? And then maneuvers. Disarming attack. Evasive footwork. Grappling strike. Menacing attack. Pushing attack. Riposte. Trip attack. And feats athlete. Durable. Grappler. Savage attacker. Tavern. Brawler. The Pugilist is specifically designed to be a boxer. Pugilist is another word for a boxer, whereas the other one, the brawler, is a little bit more designed around someone that just really attacks with whatever they have handy, and is very kind of brash and physical. The Pugilist is more around the idea of someone that specializes in boxing, as opposed to the more Eastern martial arts that you see represented in the monk class. And I like that. I think it's really interesting. If you've never, I personally have studied quite a few different martial arts for over 20 years. If you've never studied boxing, boxing is a fascinating martial art. And a lot of people kind of disregard it because most other martial arts allow you to strike with a lot more than just your fists. They'll get elbows and kicks and attacking with knees and shins depending on the martial art. And they'll be grappling in a lot of martial arts and MMA. Boxing is entirely about perfecting your ability to throw punches. And it is an extremely scientific martial art at this point. So yeah, the idea of a pugilist, someone that's just an immensely powerful boxer, is a really cool idea for especially for a battle master, because boxing in itself is not just going up and swinging wildly at people. Boxing is a very intellectual thing when you get to higher levels. And if you watch two really powerful, talented, skilled boxers, they're both sitting there and they're testing their abilities and they're seeing what they can get away with, and they're trying to see if they can read their opponents. Like it's a really cerebral martial art. So yeah, combining that with a battle master, which is designed to be this very cerebral, tactical class, you get a really cool idea for a character. 3 more, really quick. Shock Trooper, great weapon fighting. Wonder where this is going to go. Maneuvers, menacing attack, pushing attack, sweeping attack. So you can scare people, you can move them, and you can hit lots of them all at the same time. And then feats, Charger, great weapon master, heavy armor master. The Shock Trooper is literally that. They run in. Their plan is generally screw up whatever plans the enemy has. Doesn't matter what our plans are. If we can make sure their plans don't work, we win by default. So cool fighting, cool build there. Skirmisher, archery, thrown weapon for fighting. Ambush, bait and switch, distracting, strike, and quick toss with alert, dual wielder, mobile, or skulker. Skirmisher is exactly that. They're a character that's designed for hit and run kind of things. They weave in and out of combat. They specifically mentioned the mobile feat. I'm a big fan of that one because anytime you make a melee attack against an enemy, even if you don't hit, they can't make opportunity attacks for you. So it's a perfect perfect idea to build a hit and run character using a battle master and the mobile feat. And then finally, the strategist. You take the defense fighting style, and then you do things like Commander Strike, Commanding Presence, Maneuvering Attack, Rally, Tactical Assessment. and feats like Inspiring Leader, Keen Mind, Linguist. There was a class in 4th edition that I loved called the Warlord. The Warlord was a strength-based leader, which in 4th edition was a healer. So this was a strength-based healer. And one of the things that the Warlord could do is they had a lot of powers that allowed them to let other people make attacks or use their abilities and things like that. So a really played Warlord would literally sit back away from the combat and just have the people that hit really hard make 2 or 3 attacks per turn. Because they could just grant attacks to allies and then heal people when they needed it. That's literally what this strategist is recreating. Rally is gives them temporary hit points. So you're effectively healing them. Commander's Strike is where you're literally giving out attacks, if I remember correctly. Yeah, you get to give one of your attacks away. Like, it's a really, really cool idea for a Battle Master. And again, it's taken right out of the 4th edition playbook. So really, really like that. So I know this has been really long. Final thoughts on the optional class features and the new maneuvers. I like the new fighting styles. I think some are a little bit more useful than others. But if you add in the martial versatility, that makes really any fighting style viable, because the ones that really aren't useful until later levels, you don't have to take at level 1, which can be really, really good for you. For the maneuvers, I love the maneuvers. I think they're all really, really interesting, really, really cool. I love the Battle Master fighter. So overall, I think this is probably, other than the Ranger, which needed to be done, I think this is probably one of the best optional features sections in Tasha's, just because it just expands so much of what the fighter can be, and again, really does turn the fighter into a very, very customizable class, which that's kind of what it was designed for, and now it's just even more so. So anyway, that's all for me today. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button. It lets me know you liked it. It lets YouTube know you like it. And if enough people let YouTube know that you liked it, YouTube lets other people see it instead of hiding it in the depths of unsearchables. So please hit that like button. In addition, hit the subscribe button. With Tasha's out and a brand new series I just started called Mastering Astral Projection, about how to run online games and make them feel like an in-person game. I'm putting out a lot of content. This week, I put out 5 videos, not including my upload of my Wednesday night streams. So hit the subscribe button. You're going to get a lot for your money for a little bit. And your money is nothing, because subscribing is for free. So it's even better deal. In addition, hit the notification bell, just so when I do put all these videos out, you're not missing any of them, because that can happen. Sometimes I upload them at weird times. So yeah. In the comments down below, what build are you most excited about? I know we took a little bit too long discussing those builds, but I loved them, and I thought they were so cool. So in the comments below, what kind of really interesting fighter can you think of using any of the new fighting style options, any of the new maneuvers? I would love to hear your guys' crazy fighters in the comments down below. Otherwise, again, that is all for me today, and I will see you guys next time. All right? Bye-bye.